Good morning, everyone. Welcome to digital demo number 30. God, can you believe we did 30 of these already? We are back in BC visiting Jake James's shop. He's going to make something sculptural and squishy. Hopefully he's figured out exactly what he's going to make yet, but oh, he's shaking his head no on the little screen.
I have no idea. Okay, so are we on screen? Is it me?
Yep.
Okay.
You're great. We're all looking at you.
Oh, okay. That's not necessarily great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming back. This is my second time doing one of these for the NWBA. Thanks, Kellen, for hosting all the, gratitudes and everything. So I've been asked today to do something a little bit sort of sculptural and squishy, and I spent the entire week designing completely traditional ironwork. So my brain is in a kind of a weird parallel dimension universe. But I'm gonna do one of those circle forms that I seem to do a lot of because they come up a lot in my sculptural design work. And we're going to stick that on the end of a sort of a bit of flat bar, and we're going to noodle that around and just make a kind of a thing that does that. Totally a free form sort of piece. There's no overall design or concept to it. So I'm starting with it's very specifically measured straight out of my rack, 11.5 inches of 1.5 inches by 3/4, or a number of millimeters by a number of millimeters for our European and English people. Letting that take a warm up. And Scottish. I shouldn't say English. I should say European and Scottish and international people that measure things properly. So this demo is going to be almost entirely at the power hammer. I'm just going to bring you over here and I'm going to show you my little surgery table, little introduction while the bar is warming up. So my hammer, for those of you who don't know my shop or me, it's first time visiting, I'll give you a quick tour. Here is the shop. So I've got furnaces and anvils. I've got a coal forge, which is about to get pulled out, I think after this job, possibly even before. Got a number 8 fly press. That's because I can't get solid fuel that burns worth a damn. My hammer is an 85 kilo D-Moor. It's a Belgian hammer. It's a belt-driven side flywheel, valve similar to a Bechet, but they hit like an absolute bugger. They've got a really massive ram diameter, so they're really nice for the weight they've got. Very controllable furnace and induction furnace, and torch, and more handles, and flattened table or acorn table as they are in the UK. So that's the shop, and then I have here my little workstation that I keep by the hammer. So the tooling that we're going to be mostly using today, I'm going to be using to start off with a double-ended side set, create a bit of isolation of material. I sort of thought a little bit about what I'm going to make, but it's a little bit of a free ball. I haven't measured anything. A bunch of lumps on sticks that we've got here for squeezing out various shapes. And these are all 3 of these are made of railway tie, a really nice hard material, some kind of S range, I think. And then I'll also be using in my pickup tongs here some little nugget tools that I use. These are all 4140 because they have a really nice kind of forgiving forging range with a 4140. You can beat the hell out of it. It just keeps squishing around before it explodes on you. So I like that. These do have a little lock on the end.
Yeah, kind of hard to do one-handed, it looks like.
Yeah. So yeah, things sort of hold steady a little bit, and then to forge the end out, we're going to use this pair of clip-on dies. So these bolt onto my hammer. They have their little wedge nut that holds everything on, and they match to a corresponding hole there. You can see in my top and bottom die they're drilled with holes. So that's kind of the things I'm going to be using. And the bar now should be pretty hot, so I'm just going to first thing I'm going to do, as with any forging process, is we're going to isolate a bit of material, sort of draw out between our centers. And then once I've got that initial set down done, then I'm going to ramp in and start noodling things around with all these bits of equipment. So I got told off for this last time. I'll put my safety glasses on. I'll try and keep them on for the duration of the thing for health and safety. So I'm going to be taking this 1.5 by 3/4, which is 40 by 20. I'm gonna be flattening the end out of it to pull the noodle around. So I'm probably going to isolate, I don't know, like 4 or 5 inches off the end. I'm going to use a double side set for this. I'm going to chop in either way, pull out a little kind of a neck in off one side, so we'll have full dimension bar set down to thinner, wider bar on the end. Then I'm going to squish that end out. Then I'm going to whip it around, and then we'll come back in with all these sort of side setty weird tools, and we'll just kind of squish the underneathy bit and form kind of a weird little noodle there. So you'll have to bear with me if I occasionally stop to look at things, so I don't know what I'm doing, because I may not know exactly what I'm doing in this process. So eyeballing that around there. It's a really handy little tool. Has everyone got decent visuals on this?
Yep, we can see it real well.
So even though I do really squishy work all the time, that's kind of my jam. You know, really squishy work starts with basic standard processes of isolation, forging down to stock, all the things that you learn in school that are the proper things to do with a piece of steel. That's the root of everything, right? That's a cool thing. Everyone should have one on their hammer. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with these. I know Toby Hickman made them really popular in North America, and I'm sure I've seen them around. So this is a double-ended side setting tool. So when you're wanting to isolate material there, you've got a left and a right-hand side set, just with flipping a tool. So that's the working aspect, the radius on the top and the angle. Really handy for a lot of these sort of pretty simple operations. So just going to come through now. I'm leaving this mass in here fairly big. I'm going to chamfer out all my corners because that's kind of symptomatic of my style of working it. Whoa, rushing around, pay attention. Ew, me. So a lot of the work that I do is I get away with it because I use quite a small hammer. Like an 85-kilo hammer is not massive. Want to pull this down to about a 1/2 inch sort of dimension in here. Getting away from that knuckle a little bit. About 9/16 there now, so I'm almost down to my 12 mil or my 1/2 inch. I do a lot of work just eyeballing things. It sometimes leads to trouble when I'm forging. Told it can be quite frustrating to work with me because I don't have a lot of stop blocks and other useful touch devices in my shop. I guess when you develop this kind of very organic style of work, very reactive. What I do is very like I'm responding to my own kind of interpretation of what the material's doing and all that kind of jazzness. So Okay, so these shapes, there's probably a formula for how they work. Let's do a measurement on it right now so we can tell. Here we have a Jeff Holtley special measuring stick. Jeff is a good friend and a very talented man. 5 inches. I've got 5 inches of, inch and 3/4 by half. Generally, I measure these things by the inside radius. And I generally can account for the fact they're probably going to stretch by 1/3-ish. Because we try and stay away from that inside edge. See, if you're doing one of these circles, you never measure the outside edge because it's a moving target. So we've got 5.5 inches on the inside. I'll do a cold run for you so you can see what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab 2 pairs of tongs, so I've got really good control. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in. I want to go this way, make sure I go the right way. So set facing up, so that's going to pull out this way. I'm going to come in right close to the base. I'm going to run in with my dies. I'm not going to hit it. I'm just doing a test run here. Okay, in there. And I'm going to do 2 or 3 in here, and I'm going to start to see how much kind of bend I'm getting. And then before I go too far up it, I'm going to come back to the tip, and I'm going to work the tip out. Because if I just keep working this thing from the base out, this thing's going to go whee, and then I'll never be able to get to the end of it. If I same again, if I work from the tip down, there's a chance this thing might curl over on itself, and I can't get back to this bit. So I want to do the ends first, and then come back in and work the middle. So I don't need it screaming hot for this. So we're going to come in, bring that in nice and close to the end. And I want to try and keep my dies away from that inside edge. So I can come in and just kind of do all that, pull it out. See how much it's moving already. I think, can you see how much it's moving already?
A little bit. Yeah, we can tell it's got a little bit.
Bring the camera in so you're looking right down on it. Okay, so I started at the bottom. I haven't gone all the way of where I want to go. Now I'm coming in at the top. Having 2 tongs on this is critical because I want to be able to hold this thing dead steady under my... I don't want to do things like that. Every time you miss it and grab that inside edge, the problem you create is that you now forge the interior circumference and you straighten out what you've just done. So, okay, still got tons and tons of thickness there, but I just want to kind of get these first hits isolated. Create some definition. So these tools, depending on, like, a bigger radius will spread more rapidly, but you get less definition. A tighter radius, when you're chopping sort of definitive chops like a pair of scissors, you get less lateral spread because you're actually leaving a lot of material between each ridge, so you won't pull as tight a radius as quickly, but you can get a more defined radius and then maybe knock it around with a hammer. So these are 25mm radius pullers, really aggressive on a hammer this size, so you can get into the material and absolutely hog the crap out of it with these. I've also got some 30mm round ones, and then I've got my big regular radius pullering guys. And I have duplicates of most of these shapes in just the top tool. So there's my, not quite a duplicate, but it's that one there will do just what I want in the top tool. Got a nice heat on this. Come back in. Gonna work those lower 3 out a little more. Obviously, the more forging you do towards the outer edge, like you see how I'm pulling the material back, the more spread I get because I'm now stretching more material width to the back, to the outside edge of my radius, which naturally creates a bigger radius, tighter radius on the inside edge. Still got a lot of thickness there, so I'm going to take these way down. The risk with these tight fullering dies on this hammer is if I pinch a little too aggressively, I'll chop right through this material. The one thing to think about if you're doing this sort of work is your hammer tool, your fuller must remain perpendicular to the center line through your curve. Right, so you'll see how I'm moving around with each time I hit it. A little more definition on that inside edge, there we go. I'm getting a little bit of unevenness to my inside edge. I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to knock that out with a hand hammer later. So now that I've got some movement here, I'm going to come and make those center ones out. We might find that this doesn't pull around enough, and I'm going to run over this just in a more kind of free-forged way. Take out some of those really aggressive ridges and make it into a more of a gentle ripple, and that's going to really show the radius around. But the whole process you will see then, from a defined gradual radius to a more heavily textured or unevenly textured but tighter circle. Question while we're waiting for the heat.
Perfect. Oh, well, that was a pleasure to watch. You did a great explanation while you were going.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, because I'm completely freeballing this one, I'm probably going to end up chopping some of those ridges out to pull a much tighter radius in here, but we'll see kind of what we get. We might need to noodle a little bit with a hand hammer around the horn to tighten it up if we want to keep it with a defined ridges on it, or we angle it up. Obviously, right now we're in the flat. If we let that curve up into more of a conical sort of shape, we will increase our radius as well. So,
John Dorfeld's asking about your hammer. What's kind of, how old is it? What's the history on that, Demore?
Demore stopped making hammers, I believe, the year I was born, which was 1994. No, they stopped making them in '76. I think the factory burned down in the '80s and they lost all the forms and all the paperwork. Kind of a bummer, but yeah, Belgian hammer. This is definitely one of the later models from what I've been able to tell from photos and looking at some of the other ones, like the way the oiler is set up and the way the casting is a little bit more simplified. These are definitely a later run thing. There were two of them bought by the military dockyards in Vancouver. There was this one, that's got really hot again. There was this one, and then there was a 500 weight. This one somehow came to Vancouver Island. Don't know why. Some scrapper bought it basically. The bigger one stayed in Vancouver, went down to John. Oh my goodness me, Emmerling. John Emmerling. Yeah. Went down to John Emmerling in Seaside, and now it's gone somewhere into the interior. They're really nice hammers. The machining on them is just off the charts. They're so tight. The precision on them. And like compared to a 2B, like the diameter of the cylinder on this one is quite considerably bigger. And they seem to hit, like I've forged on quite a lot of 2Bs. This hammer is rated at a lower kilogram rating than a 2B, but it hits, I would say, a good whack harder. So I'm pretty happy with really a nice hammer.
Well, for anybody else interested, I know that Emmerling
so giving that a bit of a scrub with the old block brush. Now we're just going to come in here and start tipple-tapping these away. One of the things I have to watch as I start thinning things out is, as I forge the one next to it wants to close up. Like you're spreading the material so rapidly sideways, if the rest of the material next to it is not got the resistance to hold up, it'll just fold and buckle. So if I take one down paper thin and then forge the next one down really aggressively next to it, it'll just ripple, the inertia in the end of the material can just cause that thin section to fold and ripple over. See, this one here is starting to close up. This one here. Get a bit creative with my tongue holding here. Oh, there we go. Also, the more you forge down each one of these, the more definition you lose, because as it spreads out wider, it becomes wider than the impact area of the fuller. So we lose a little bit of detail, and I'm not sophisticated enough to have actually made a set of fullering dies that goes one size up from this. So there it is coming around. Again, we've still got a lot of thickness in that. So I'm going to come through one more time, just working out the swoops that I've got, and then I may whiz over this and just take all the definition out and pull it into a nice little tight radius. So bit of a block brush. The reason that the demo was postponed is because my starter motor died on my hammer. Starter motor, the magnetic start died. But it's wild, like, you know, stood here up close to this, just watching how much this stuff pulls around. It's pretty crazy. What have we got? Yeah. So I'm halfway round. I've got lots of definition, but I'm not going to have enough. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to just kind of loosey-goosey chew this around a little bit. But this is sort of showing you the process. So if that's next heat, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to get way looser on this. I'm going to run out on those ridges, and that's going to whip this thing around. I might even do, I might not go all the way down each ridge because I might get too much movement, but I'm going to hit halfway down each ridge, pull those out. That should curl this thing around. Okay, so this one's warm again. I'm going to come in and undo all my hard work, putting on all this lovely defined texture here. I could knock this round with a hammer, but like a hand hammer, but I'm not going to do that. So we're going to come in and we're going to hit on the center of each ridge. We're going to pull these around. See what that does for us. Hopefully by hitting in the center of each ridge, it's going to leave still some definition to my texture. That's really starting to come. Whoop. Gotta get to the end of that, because I'm going to lose this pretty quickly here if I don't. Hey. Okay, so I've got a real ugly going on at the end of this one. That little wobble there is super not attractive in there. So I'm going to take a little heat and I'm going to tap that out with a hand hammer just over the horn. And then I'm going to give these 4 ridges a little bit of a wibble in there. And now I have the shape that I want.
Jake, Pete's asking when you're going to have your other hammer installed.
Hopefully in the next month here, because I'm going to need 2 hammers running on this job, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to need 3 for some of these big knuckle forgings. I'm on the gate design that anyone go and look on Instagram, but the dog bars have got a pretty heavy swaged forging that I'm planning to do out of probably 2-inch round. I think my Demore would handle it, but I think the Massey would handle it more comfortably. So the foundation is poured. For the hammer, I've got to pour a foundation wall for the building, and then I've got to build a building, and then I've got to put the hammer in. The problem with my shop is that it's not that much space inside to install a big massey, so I actually have to build a whole new extension to my shop. So sadly, I ran out of money last summer to do such extensive renovations, but I'm hoping that this job will fund my hammer obsession. So, forging, for those people who are watching who perhaps don't do a lot of forging of curves, I don't know who that would be, or anyone that's just getting sort of newer into this, whenever you're forging a curve on an anvil, constantly move your material so that the underside of the piece you're hammering doesn't just get a flat, or if you're doing it over the anvil, doesn't just take on a really aggressive kink. Not saying aggressive kinks are bad, but they're not what we're looking for right now. Pun intended. Okay, so I just took that little kind of ridge out of the bottom side. I've got a bit of deformation on the top. I'm not really too concerned about it. Luckily I don't have a drawing that I've got to follow on this one. Okay, back over this way, row. Now I've got to be really clever because this is going to work all around me. I'm going to turn this around, switch hands, get all ambidextrous here. Find my little mark here. So you can really see that moving. Pull the camera in real close here, Rowan. Bring the camera right in close. So hopefully you guys got a good view of the top of this, because you'll see this stuff. It's ludicrous how much the material moves. Very satisfying. Switch it around again because I'm starting to work into myself. One of the things that I think we all do very naughtily on power hammers is, often, especially with these small ones, we find ourselves working with like tongs underneath your belly or sort of underneath your chin or something, and you see a photo of yourself working. It's like, hang on, I'm going to take another heat on this. We see how much that closed up. I've got one more to do in here. Anything beyond that I'm going to do with a hand hammer, but I've got a pretty nice radius. There might be a little bit of nibbling to do under here. I'm just going to take a quick heat. I'm not going to shut the hammer down because this will warm up in no time. Yeah, so like, you suddenly find yourself working and your hammer's coming under your ribs and stuff. I probably do it worse than a lot of people because I do a lot of work where I'm really in close with my dies. Sometimes you get to a bigger hammer and you suddenly like, oh man, you can't do that stuff. Like a lot of this work that I do is geared around working on a smaller hammer, because I'm often working slightly out of plane. I'm working kind of weird angles. I've done work like this on a 500 weight, and it's doable, but you've got to be really careful, and sometimes it's bloody terrifying. This hammer will tear your bloody arms off if you hit something wrong. Like in that slideshow, you showed that cello player, double bass player thing I did years ago, very early on. That thing almost ripped my shoulders out. So now I'm just looking for potential flat spots in the circle on the inside radius. And I'm just going to use the material itself just to pull it around. So just give it a couple of little taps on that outside edge. And that's about as close as I want to get. My inside radius is not 100% even. Hey man, good enough. Okay, so that's step one of this little sculpture done. Going to give this a quick wire brush, which is kind of a redundant process because the whole damn thing's got to go back in the fire. So next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this section that I originally set down. I'm going to bend that over to a 90-degree. I might do a little bit of an upset into it just to push some material into what's going to become the center of a knuckle. That's going to allow me to put a ball tool in and do some kind of, Play-Doh kind of forging in there. And then I'm going to sort of squish this other end around. So I've got to do one more heat at least where this nice forged, or this forged section, I'm not going to say it's nice at this point. This forged section is going to go back in the furnace, which is rubbish because it's going to get all scaly and horrible. Disadvantage of propane over solid fuel is, isolating heats. Could possibly do it with a torch, but I want to get a bit of warmth in there to bend it around. So I'm going to chuck it in the furnace, see how I do with that. So the jingly jangling you can hear in the background is me putting some, swing the thing around here. I'm going to take, so bending forks that I made for my Hardy, for the anvil. Nothing special about those. I set mine on the 45, I find for some reason I prefer to work that than straight across the anvil. That might just be my strange preference. I'm going to whip these dies off a hammer here. Hey, Al, hey, Rose, swing the camera around, buddy. Oh, bloody hell, this one's tight. Yeah, there we go. So zoom in here, buddy. So it's a 1/2-inch hole drilled straight through my dies, which was a bit scary when I did it, just because, drilling into your hammer dies. And what I have is an I-beam washer. I have I-beam washers on a bolt, 1/2-inch bolt, and then on the die have another I-beam washer welded on, and it's die ground out to an oval. So when I put that on the die with the large side of the I-beam washer facing down on my bottom die, and I put the corresponding I-beam washer on those bolts and I bolt it up, the angle in those washers forces the die to suck down to the pallet here. So you get a really nice aggressive lock on them. And it's super cheap, right? It's just a piece of flat bar welded up. They break, they tear apart if they come loose. And so you've got to check the bolts occasionally, make sure they're not rattling loose inside your hammer. Because obviously you don't want that to happen, especially with something like a Nasal or a Bechet where the round goes up inside the cylinder. Okay, Ro, whip them around here. This may or may not work.
Is beautiful in its simplicity. I really like that.
Yeah, I took the idea from Jafe Howard, and he took it from, I don't know who he took it from. It's not an original Jake James, that's for sure. The absolute dream setup is to have, your opposing die wedges and key dies and all that kind of stuff. That's a lot of machining costs in your initial setup. It's probably as cheap in the long run and certainly quick.
It's being echoed in the audience that the creator of that would be Jeffrey Funk.
Is it Jeffrey Funk? I thought it was.
Oh.
I thought it might even be pre-Jeffrey Funk. I'm not dissing Jeffrey Funk. He's invented everything, so it could well be Jeffrey Funk. He's a pretty creative brain. Okay, so I pulled that out of the way. Super loosey-goosey gooseneck kind of a thing. I haven't pulled it too tight. I'm not going to upset it because there's no way I can get in there. I could grab it in the vise and hammer it down, but to get a bit of mass in the middle. For today's exercise, not too worried. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that where it is. I'm going to flip it around now, and I'm going to get in and noodle the rest of this piece of bar around, do some squishies, pull it out, make a wiggle, and then we'll come back in here and we'll put some ball tooling in there. But I don't want to make this too thin until I've got the other end done. So I'm going to do something. I don't know how it's going to look on this piece. I'm going to do something where I'm going to chop in now with this fullering die. This is just ground out of a piece of railroad track. It's years old now and hasn't deformed yet. really hard material. And I'm going to chop in from the top. And then as I come down, I'm going to start rolling my material away from myself. And I'm going to start rolling my fuller in towards myself. So having created just a standard isolated fullering mass, I'm not going to forge the pooch out, because I want to use the material that I'm driving ahead of this fuller to create kind of a stretch. And I'm going to roll this out this way, and then it'll take that lip and just kind of drag it out like a piece of plasticine, and creates these nice ripples and sort of that thing that I like to do with this material. All right. So I'm going to come in this way, so that I create kind of a knuckle in behind this, and I get a zigzag kind of a shape. Got a pretty decent hold in the tongs. I haven't got tong rings on these. My goal here is to not smack my son in the face. I'm going to come across the width of the die, which means I'm going to get some chopping in the back, but I don't really mind. Give that a nice hit. And then come in here. Okay, so I've now defined my 45. You can see that edge. Bring the hammer in here, Ro. Hey, bring the hammer in, buddy. Bring the hammer in. So I've just defined my edge, keeping it all square. Now I'm going to start dragging that. Okay, I've gone past a certain point where I really can't do too much to that. It just creates these weird swoops, just not doing anything for me particularly on this little piece, but I'll put one in on the other side, going the other way, and then I'm going to come in between those with a ball tool and pull some of those points out. I actually got a pair of tongs that's gripping right in between the ridges of these, so I've got a nice solid thing. I'm going to come onto the flat of my hammer now, so hopefully I don't lose too much of the definition of what I just put in. Keep a good grip on that, and the tongs, be conscious when you're doing this sort of silly thing with a hammer. Lost that one. I'm not going to get in and work that corner now. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll get in here. Try and drag a bit of this with me. Yeah, so I didn't lose too much out of the backside of this one. Kind of like that little curly cue we got at the top. So I don't know. I can't claim any particular artistic inspiration on this piece, but it's kind of fun just to noodle. Don't often get to do that. Just using that slightly lower end of the heat to give me a bit of definition there. Hey. It's a thing, isn't it? In it. So it's just a complete noodle stick, this. I'm just going to pull this end away now, and we'll... I'm going to grab my camera, and I'm just going to give you a little walkthrough of my little tool rack here, while this thing is warming up. I'm looking for a tool that I use to forge bamboo, but it also does quite nice for like bony knuckle joints. So these are my rack of lumps of metal on sticks. They're they've all got various uses. There's a lot of single top tools of just fullers and blocks and bob punches and different fullers. There we go, have a look at that. I find that I can never have too many of them, and I can never understand it when I go into someone's shop that has a power hammer and they haven't just got racks and racks of rusty bits of metal on sticks, because I find them super useful. Lots of swages, all swages, and do you regularly allow yourself? I missed that question from Pete Hill just came in. Could someone read that to me?
Yes, he asked, do you regularly allow yourself development time to just play and explore the materials in sexy shapes? Or do you make for fun or for use? Wait, materials and shapes.
Yeah, I would love to say that I have free Forge Fridays every week and I make beautiful sculptures and noodle around, and I don't. I actually find with my demonstrating and stuff that I've been fortunate enough to get to do a lot of, that's kind of my creative expression time. So I might have a process stored up in my brain that I've never tried before, and someone ask me to come and do a collaborative build, and that's going to be the time that I use for really the most of my sort of expressive work. It's kind of a peril, isn't it? You get yourself into a position where you've got bills to pay and clients barking at the door and nipping at your heels, and you say, oh, I'm going to take that afternoon and I'm just going to play, and then you're like, oh man, if I light that furnace, it's going to cost me $50, and I could be earning this much money forging all these pickets, and so you forge the pickets instead. And that's maybe self-discipline. I do occasionally, not enough, I think. If I'm going to be really honest, I would love to spend more time playing and not feeling guilty about it. I think that's one of the things, is to be able to do something and not feel like you're cheating a client or cheating yourself out of money you could be earning. It's a hard thing to do, I think. And it's not like I'm a militant capitalist or anything. So I've got a good heat on this. I'm gonna quickly throw a pair of spring fullers into the hammer here and just isolate some material with a soft edge. What ones am I going to use? These guys. So I use this saddle with a little bolt in it. When you don't have a helper to hang on to a swage, this is a good way to steady things. Works okay. They bounce around like crazy, but for a quick set, they're pretty handy. So grab a nice grip on these. Okay, so there's my weird, funky noodle thing that I've just forged out. Going to come right to the other side of that with my dies. Whoa. She's jumping around. We'll do that. So I'm basically forging a long carrot, or semi-long carrot. Jumping around, so I haven't got a good grip on it. Terribly dangerous. Don't do this at home, kids. See, there you go, with me forging with a pair of tongs underneath my head. Really not a good idea. Too cold. All right. That's the other thing with doing this kind of weird squishy work, is suddenly really simple operations become difficult because you've created something that's monstrously difficult to hold on to. I do find that happens quite a lot. Okay, so I'm just going to do another little bit of a pull down. Oh, bit of a pull down here. Come on. How do you hold something straight when nothing else is straight? Perennial question I ask myself. Gee. It's also why I have about a bazillion pairs of tongs, apparently none of which will hold the material I want. I'm going to go back to these guys.
Is it ever possible to use 2 tongs?
Is it what? Is it what?
Have you ever tried to use 2 tongs to get 2 points fixed on a power hammer?
Oh yeah, yeah. Anytime when I like this, I can't because I'm rotating too much. But like when I was forging the ripple out, I'll use 2 pairs of tongs all the time. Yeah. If you're doing like big, heavy production forgings where you're pulling tapers or doing something that is relatively repetitive, and you're not flipping the material in and out of the furnace, I'll either weld a porta bar onto it, or I weld just a little stubby of like 1.5 by 1/2, and then I have a big, heavy pair of tongs that will hold those little stubbies. You know, nice when you're doing lots of heavy work. I like to have a heavy pair of tongs, especially when you're forging a heavy bar, so you can counterbalance the weight of what you're hanging onto at the hammer. I don't like holding a heavy billet in a small pair of tongs because you've got no response to it. So I'm going to come in now. So this tool here is, man, I made these a long time ago to make bamboo. It's an open swage. I'm just going to ripple in here and try and knuckle these out, and that's going to cut in these kind of funny bone knuckles on my material. A little bit dicey because I'm going to be, how am I going to do this? I'm going to put a glove on. I'm going to quench that thing off. I'm going to hang on to it with my bare naked hands in a glove, not bare naked. So to make this a little easier, tongs are super handy, but they're obviously a bit frustrating because you can't always hold on to things. So okay, orders me a nice little knuckle. I'll come down in here, sort of a power hammer distance of width apart, right? If I can get my hammer in between. So forging it in the square first, then to the octagonal, standard forging process. Yeah, you can see how it starts to form up. I'm close to getting it there, but I got a little bit of a thickness on that one, so I'm going to bring it down some more. I'm going to grab myself another heat. Okay, so we come back in here, going to have another go at the one we just did. Ow, that's hot. Feels like it's probably pretty close to good. Go in there and do another one. 3 knuckles. 3 knuckles is all we're going to get on this one. That's pretty all right. Take another heat on the lower one, and I'm going to forge in between all of those.
Hey, Jake, we got another
Yeah.
question about the Massey. What size is the Massey?
Hang on, let me forge this out. I've got one little bit of noodling to do, and I will answer that question momentarily.
Great, thank you.
I've got all my knuckles forged there. So now we're just going to come in and do a quick. Apparently my gloves have got a hole in them. Right, I'm going to need a little bit of a tool to get in between those. My Massey, let me shut this down. My Massey is so rated as a 300 weight hammer. So it's just over 300, whatever it is, 350 pound ram weight. But it's an absolute mutant beast of a hammer. So it's 1929 is on the plate, and it's a very, very early clear space casting. So it's similar, to a Bechet or a Nasal, and it's a self-contained hammer. The anvil is from a steam hammer, so it's a very narrow-sided, deep anvil. The ram is a steam hammer ram, so it's a solid piece of something 4140, I imagine, or a similar alloy ram that's about 4.5 inches in diameter, and then it has this big club foot on it, like you'll see on the old steam hammers. And the valving on it is from an in-slides Massey, so what it doesn't have this floating operation that modern air hammers have. So it will start from the down position, starts on a bypass, starts on the down position. When you engage the hammer, it will lift up and the ram will just sit up top. It doesn't float. And then you have a series of single blow hits where you can bring that ram down to get a single hit that will unfold. And you can go little tippy taps to a full blow hit in one go, and then leave the ram down so your tools don't bounce. The in-slides valving, to get to the oscillating mode, the hammer starts from this, you go through that process to the down, and then you start on your low range hit and go through your hard hit. So it's a little bit of a weird thing. Takes a bit of getting used to. It's been a long time since I worked on an in-slide. It's going to be fun. But yeah, I think it was probably an experimental hammer experimental hammer made by Massey when they were developing the clear space technology. So, and then I'm guessing they just sold it to Canadians. They were like, man, these guys are suckers. They'll buy anything. Sell them this weird mutant beast. Lived its whole working life in Vancouver, in East Vancouver, in the docks, the marine metal shop, ironically called Pilkington, because Pilkington is another UK brand of hammer. And then that shop closed down, and Larry Langdon, who we sadly lost a few years ago, he was looking at the hammer, and I got a call from him, oh geez, how many years ago now, saying, hey Jake, been thinking about this hammer in Vancouver, but I don't need another hammer. And he tipped me onto it that the guy was selling it. And I shipped it out to the island. So it's kind of nice. It's all the domestics for me. It's British and Canadian. That's
Thanks,
the story
Jake.
of the hammer. Yeah.
That was awesome. Thank you.
I don't know if it's just me, but I think there is a tendency with all of us to anthropomorphize our equipment. You get your old master's hand hammer, and it's like a prized possession. It doesn't hit any different to a regular hammer, but oh no, hang on, a little bit more. I think there is something in the working life of the tool that they pick up something, bit of history, bit of life.
I don't think you're alone in anthropomorphizing. I know I do it. I think a lot of us do.
I think the entire of the West African metal working community did it to a point where it became endemic to their entire culture. So I think there's something in it. If I'm going to believe in something, I think I'd rather believe in iron magic than anything else.
I'm right there with you. We have a comment here that says, don't anthropomorphize your tools. They hate that.
Very good, yeah. 10 points to whoever made that comment.
That was Michael. I cannot pronounce his last name. Thanks, Michael.
Got a weird little nibble on this bottom one. We'll take care of that. Okay, so there's some kind of like bamboo caney, knuckly little forgings. So I'm just going to tidy up in here a little bit, so it's a bit ugly. And I think I'm just going to come in between here and throw some of the top tooling in with the bull tool just to show you how I do that. And that's it, I'll be done. All right. So I'm just going to try and my knuckle tool kind of made a bit of an ugly at the top edge, so I'm just going to kind of run this in hard against these pullers and just try and dress this top edge out a bit. Obviously, it's going to want to spit back against me a lot. That'll do. Just take out some of those oogies, right? We'll knock this around a bit. I'm just coming over the anvil to give it a scuff with the brush. Straight enough for my kind of work. Okay, so what am I going to do with this weird, funky looking thing? I think I've got, I'm going to come into some of these bigger knuckles in between here and just drive in with a little bull tool and just kind of squish some more material around, just because why not? And then I think what I'm going to do is run in from this side. I'm going to run in from this side here so I don't lose it. And I'm going to drag the bull tool up in here, pull this out to sharpen that corner a little bit. Am I holding this where you can see it? So I'm going to start hitting here with the bull tool, drag that up and pull material out towards this corner, which is going to tip that over. And then once that's tipped over a bit, I'll probably do a little bit of bending and get it all in a straight line. And then be a lovely planter for someone, a little plant holder. A blacksmith classic.
Sounds great.
What was I going to do? I was going to hit it with the bull tool. So I'm going to leave it tops. Top end in the hammer. So this is the tool I'm going to use for this. It is a 25 mil round ball tool. I call them bob punches. I don't know if that's really what it is, or a ball fuller, or who knows what the proper name is. The one thing I do with these are 4140. Can you see these, Rowan? Am I holding it so that you can see it in the camera? So if you compare the length of the tool to the width of the tool, I'm obviously longer than I am wide, but by the smallest amount that I can possibly do it, and I radius the crown of that tool fairly aggressively, which means that I can start driving this tool in sort of weird angles into the material, because what I'm obviously looking for in the power hammer is the line of thrust through my tool can't exceed the center line. Because as soon as I go past the center line, from top corner to bottom corner, as soon as I go past the center line, my tool's going to spit and skid. So I see a lot of people using these tool power hammer tools, which is utterly counterintuitive to me, because I mean, obviously, if you've got to get to the bottom of a hole, that's a different thing. But if you're doing this kind of sculptural, plasticine-y, palette knifey sort of pushing around with the steel, the more you can roll this tool, the more freedom it gives you. And 4140, because, and I don't know if my metallurgy is correct, but I believe 4140 has a very high elastic limit. Like, it will stretch and deform a long way before it chips. Whereas, say, 1045 or something else will face hardens a lot quicker and chips off. I found with 4140, it really takes an absolute ton of abuse before it gives up. And it also doesn't destroy my top dies. Whereas if I've got, if these were made out of H13 or something, I put that under my top die, I just have a whole bunch of dents and marks in my top die. I'm sure there's a metallurgist out there that could give me the reason why that is, but I describe it as having a high elastic limit in how it moves when it's cold.
Jake. Are you hardening the whole thing, or are you annealing the top part of it?
When I make these little ones, they're normalized, oil quenched, heated and oil quenched, and then I'll just heat the top up with a torch to red, so it goes and then just let it cool down.
That's great, thank you. Perfect.
I mean, it's the working end of the tool is spending so long in contact with the steel. The heat treatment doesn't really matter. The work hardened 4140 is as tough as it needs to be. Even normalized 4140 is pretty tough. Yeah, any tool that you're leaving sat in a piece of material for extended periods of time, you're undoing all the heat treating that you put into it. Okay, so I'm just looking at this, trying to figure out what I'm going to do to make it be a little interesting. Because, more is always the answer, isn't it, with forging? Put more things in it. So I'm just gonna, that's gonna cause me problems. Let's see what happens. So this is gonna, so I'm right on the edge of my die here. It's gonna cut in funny. It's probably gonna spit out at me, but we'll see what it does. So I'm coming in kind of to the back side of this ripple here. Controlling the tool with the top of my thumb. And you can see me kind of pulling that material out. And this is for no reason other than just to show how I sort of use that tooling a little bit. It has zero aesthetic function on this peculiar looking sculpture that we're doing. And we'll come in and do one here. All right, so I mean, it's just sticking a ball tool into a piece of material. The shape is not important.
Oh, sorry.
So the shape that I'm making is not important as so much as, I guess, demonstrating how I use the tools at the hammer. Anyway, that's just my excuse for it not looking amazing. But well worth $500,000.
Oh yes, of course. Can you remind us what the original stock size was in the beginning?
It was 11.5 inches of 1.5 by 3/4.
Thanks.
Which would be what? 218 mil of 40 by 20, something like that. And I guess when I'm doing this sculptural stuff, the thing that I'm looking to do the most is to move the material as far away from its parent stock as I possibly can in terms of the shapes and the things that you're driving into it. So what did I say I was going to do? I said I was going to push this over and go do a weirdie. I kind of want to get one in on the backside. So I'm sacrificing maybe some of the earlier forging I did in the hope of maybe putting something in. I didn't lose too much. So if I was actually doing this as a sculpture that I was like really serious about, I would never do this kind of random sticking ball tool in just to see what it does. For the sake of today's exercise, I just want to show you kind of what it does if you haven't played with this kind of thing before. So. I'm not really a fan of randomly putting texture into things just for the sake of it. I think another longtime NWBA member and friend of mine who I've worked with a lot on jobs, I don't know where he got it from, maybe it's his own thing, but he said that texture should come as a result of generating form. And I really, really like that as a sort of an ethos to work towards. Don't put twig textures on something to make it look like a tree. You want to make something look like a tree, make it look like a tree because it says tree, not because you put fake bark texture on it. It all comes down to that idea of gesture and shape, I think. Yeah. So I think I'm going to move away from the ball tool, and I think I'm going to, if I can, I don't know, what am I going to do? Just run through my gamut of tools that I have available to me. Let's quench this off.
Your cameraman is doing an awesome job as well. Everyone has complimented.
Rowan, you've been very well complimented on your camera work. It's because he's got all this experience being YouTubing and TikToking and stuff. Okay, so I'm not going to hit this now. I just want to put it under the hammer and see where I can get my tooling in and what I can do. I think I can do a bit of a vat here. Got room to move. I'm not going to hit my material. Do another weird squishy. Take some of the meat out of that goose neck, and then I'll come in up in here with the ball tool. So that answered my own question. So as this warms up, I'm going to just keep my brush going here on the circle to try and stop it from getting too scabby in that propane furnace. I personally don't mind scale at all. I have friends, no names mentioned, who obsess over getting every last bit of scale off a piece of work. And I think that's valid in certain points, but I love it. I love selling stuff covered in scale to clients. Not because I don't like my clients, but I think scale is such an integral part of what we do that, yeah, I like it. Especially certainly on a sculptural thing. All right, so I'm just going to try and scoop this out here now. Right over there. There we go. All right. I'll do, pig, I'll do. Okay, so just continuing, since I've got all these offset scoops, I might as well work them all the way up the piece. And then I'll come in with the ball tool for a final thing in there, and right on the knuckle as it goes into the swoop, I'll pull some material out of that. Then it is a thing. All right. I'm going to come in from this side, trying to make sure that the bits that I've squished out are off the anvil pallets so that I don't lose my definition. Stand back in case it jumps up and whacks me in the chin. Gosh, that's very ugly. I'm just going to come back in with a hammer and knock that inside lump out because it's a bit squiffly. Give it a nicer transition into the other weird bit. But I think that's the majority of the tools that I use for this sort of work. You know, I've got various shapes that I'll grab in the tongs. I've got, you know, fullers, and this one I use a lot, a really big, broad, ball-ended fuller. And that's a little, you know, that thing's almost as tall as it is short. Wide, short, wide, long, tall. Dimensions are pretty level, so I can really roll that in places. Yeah. And I love having my little surgeon's table by the side of my hammer here, so I can have everything. You know, most people will have some kind of a work cart they can get things to.
Yeah, that's great. I think everyone's geeking out on your tools. It's awesome. Cool.
All right, so cameraman's going to follow me around because he's such a wizard on the camera. Take the glove off because I can't hammer with a glove on. I'm going to hammer into the back of this. So I'm going to rest the front side over. Start on the horn of the anvil, point near the point. I'm going to jam the thing up into my knees to stop it from moving around. Now this is where I would probably in real life use a striker and a fuller, but my cameraman is cameramanning. So I'll just be careful with the hammer. I love these sort of tools too. Very deep, broad-faced hammers, really good for getting into the sort of the weirdo radiuses that I find myself forging. In fact, almost all of my top tools have been heavily mutated. Corners all sanded off them, faces radiused out. It's one thing, you know, confronting. I'm almost there. Let's get that line nice in there. You know, confronting, you know, potentially I'm going to be spending the next year or so doing traditional work if all things go according to plan. None of my tooling is set up for traditional work. Nothing has straight edges, nothing has flat faces. It's actually something to think about. You know, when everything I'm going to be forging potentially for the next, or definitely for the next few months, but potentially for the next year or so, is going to be you know, defined by straight edges and squares and all that mathematical stuff. Might have to make some more tools because I've modified everything I have to work soft, gentle radiuses and curves and all the swoopy stuff.
When you have a moment, Peter Clark is asking about the clip on your tongs for those little stubby tools.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I'm just dearing me. Carol, you know how I said I really like scale. You're getting a really scaly sculpture. I might do a little bit of something to this, well as a piece of wood. Let me knock this around, and then I can answer a few questions, and
Got it.
all will be well with the world, right?
If only it were so easy.
If only. I don't really talk about politics, though, so the world is all right with me. What a strange thing.
Well, you're getting lots of compliments on your strange thing. It's a gorgeous form.
Oh.
People love the swooping lines and all the texture. So
I just got to make sure it sort of sits vaguely in some semblance of relation to itself. It's another thing I find, you know, having done a lot of this work, actually the idea of coming back to a project where everything is square, it's quite appealing, because, you know, when you're doing this sort of work and putting it into an architectural setting, it's actually sometimes a real pain in the ass, excuse my French, because you know, I've got nothing to relate to anything. I've got no I'm going to turn all the noise off in my shop so that I can hear myself think. You know, if you create, you know, a railing, but you take away all your reference points for square and level and straight, sometimes it's really confusing. You know what I mean?
I do.
But it's usually worth the price. To my own sanity and to the client's pocketbook. I love these things too. Hide mallets. I don't actually want this to be dead straight. I just don't want it to be super weird, kinky. Fine, that'll do. Let's quench that end. All right. There it is. Oh, where am I? Here I am. Ta-da! It's a thing full of squishy weird shapes that started off as 11 inches of fiber. So thank you for watching, and I'll get to that question before I forget it. The clip on these tongs, I just rolled the end of most of my tongs, especially for bigger material and the power hammer, I forge the handles thin, so they're nice and springy. I always forge them in mild steel, so that in the event that something catches under the hammer or I get the angle wrong or something, the tong is more likely to bend than it before my arm breaks. I generally don't have any tool steel tongs in my shop. I really don't like them. But yeah, so they're a bit springy, and then I just roll the end of the tong over and it clips in. Yeah, most of my tongs too, I've only done this with my tool tongs. Most of my tongs, I don't like to have the ends of the tong kicked up either. I find that can jump up and bite you in the palm. But I'm always using these ones, you can see where the handle's more polished. Don't hold them by the end. So yeah, there you go.
There
There's
you
me.
are.
I can wander around. I said, does anyone else, before we scoot, does anyone else want to look at anything in the shop? Any
Yes,
tooling?
we do have a request for a shop tour if you'd like.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to spin you around again. I'm going to give you the full walk-through experience. And wait a minute, just make sure my Wi-Fi doesn't cut out. So that's the view from my forging shop. Do you want me back on landscape?
Yeah, that'd probably be better.
Okay, so this is the view out of the back doors of my shop.
Nice. Oh, someone had
Pretty lucky
asked,
they
do you
come
have
with
any
like nice
trouble
big
with
old trees. The big old trees are.
Oh.
I don't have any trouble with them. We see them occasionally.
Uh-huh.
But, they don't bother us. How do you not have any snow? Because we're on an island off the west coast of Canada, and it only snows for a week a year here. Okay, so I would take you outside. I'm going to try it. I might drop out of the call, but I just want to, so Pete can see it. He'll be pleased. Look, there's a massive foundation there, Pete. There's the building ready to happen.
We've frozen your video a bit.
There it is.
Oh, there.
Oh, okay.
The slower you move, the better the video is.
Back in. Yeah, my Wi-Fi doesn't quite reach that far. Anyway, I have got the foundation board for the Massey, I promise. The forging shop, if I stand at the back, I've got a platen table. The hammer's kind of front and center because it's the primary piece of equipment. It's about to get repainted. I'm going to paint it all gray. The red's not working for me anymore. Big propane furnace. That's like a 30-inch or something propane furnace there. And then, all those funny little buckets of tools and things that seem to pile up everywhere. Stakes and Manville Hardy tools. Swages. Loads of bottom swages, never use them. Hammers. I don't think I want to talk about hammers too much. Lots of people do those. Loads and loads of tongs. Loads of top tools. But yeah, here's what I mean with my fullers. They're all radiused. Obviously a fuller is radiused that way, but mine are radiused this way, and the edges are crowned. Same with a lot of my flatters. Where's my flatter that I really, really like? It's not even a flatter. It's kind of a cross between a cheese fuller and a flatter. I use that thing all the time because how else do you smooth out a gradual radius?
A cheese fuller? Are you forging cheese?
I don't know why it's called a cheese fuller. I have no idea, but it's a really big, broad radius fuller. It's the traditional name for it. I don't know why they do it. A whole bunch of big old tools for the Massey when that goes in. Fly press tools, a few of those. Lots of different ones. Pretty handy piece of kit, fly press. That's a handy tool. I use this when I'm doing anything that needs to be straight. If I pick this up, it's a hinging platen for the top of the fly press, so you can straighten out anything hot on that. Flatten it out. My Nagelbaum. There's a few Northwest Blacksmith luminaries on that post. More tongs, more tools. And then this is in the main part of the shop. So I've got a mill drill and a lathe, another drill press, and vertical hydraulic press. And then I teach in here. It's called a Nagelbaum. Either Nagen or Nagelbaum. That's the German word for it. And it is a German tradition of the journeyman nails. So I've just painted everything in the shop a nice traditional dark green for my teaching side, which taking all this time of not being allowed to have students in my shop to paint everything nice. And this was a carrot wind vane actually made by my helper Ryan. See if I can catch it against the light. This is for a local farm. Dear me, terrible.
Is that a carrot?
The carrot wind vane.
Very cute.
Copper tails. Yeah, pretty comical. Lots more anvils and layout bench. This is a gate, giant sliding gate we're working on, and this is the layout for the gate. That's 2 pieces of white cardboard. The railing that I did in stainless steel for that house in the last few years, it'll be up on my website. The kind of the swoops with the bend in them, kind of flowing, very slick, sort of modern contemporary. The gate is a 15-foot wide one of those. Big old layout table, and then back here we have grinders, TIG table out of where it's not drafty, sort of a small metals bench and stuff like that. And that is my shop. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you.
There's the front of the shop. Oops. Yeah, there's the Massey hiding under its tarp, desperately waiting to be used. And I built this big old gantry a few years ago because I'm on pretty soft dirt here, and it's really hard to run forklift without sinking it. So we do most of our lifting on a gantry at the moment. Yeah. So there you have my shop. Any other questions?
Charlie is asking that people say that stainless steel is a dead metal and it has no life.
Yes, I agree. I can't stand it. I spent two years working with it, and I don't want it. I could happily, apart from my cutlery, maybe I could happily never see another piece of it as long as I live.
Yeah, it's a pain to work with.
Yeah, I don't know. Was it in the last in the hammer talk I gave, I had these traditional journeymen came through the shop when I was doing that stainless job, and they looked at it and they were like, "Ah, scheiße Eisen."
Yeah, I remember you said that.
It's like, yeah, pretty much. That's horrible stuff. Some people love it, and more power to the people that love it. You know, all those guys on the East Coast that are all over forging Monel and stainless. It's like, well, I guess if you want to flog yourself to death, you know, steel reacts well to a hammer.
It does.
It feels like it enjoys being forged. Why would you choose to work with a material that clearly absolutely hates it?
Right.
Given the choice. So yeah.
I don't know if you can see the chat, but you're getting lots of compliments and hellos and goodbyes from Russia and all over the place.
All right.
Here. Lots of thank yous here.
Yeah. Good. Well, I'm glad everyone enjoyed it.
Oh yeah,
this
was great.
Thanks to you guys. Thanks to the NWBA. Always fun. And we'll talk to you guys soon. I'm gonna sign off now.